audience, before we go any further, let's take 10 seconds, and just whatever platform you're on, if you're able, like, love, share, and make sure every one of your friends, family, colleagues, and your community has access to this conversation. Because if you know anything about Dr. Webb, you know it's going to be a good conversation. Don't forget to subscribe on our website, follow us on all of our social media channels to stay up to date with all that we have going on. Help us grow beyond the Mike, as we do our part to continue to improve our community. Without further ado, let's give a warm TDH welcome to our guest this morning, the Honorable Dr. Renee Webb. Hello. How are you? Morning. Cheers. Crowd's going crazy for you. They're going crazy for you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thank you very much for asking. How are you doing?
I'm okay, but I have to ask you, before we get into anything else, I have to ask you one question. What is your most, what's your fear? What's something that, this is National Fear Day. Face your fear. If you had to face one fear today, what would it be?
I'm like, I can't be fearful of. Good question.
So you're not afraid of anything, huh?
Yeah, I don't like that.
You're cutting up a bit. The Wi-Fi's.
I'm really afraid of anything because I usually decide what it is I want to do.
The Wi-Fi is very weak in this area.
Can you check the Wi-Fi for me?
It's going in and out real quickly. But yeah, you said you're not afraid of anything. Okay.
Not that I can think of.
Okay. I love that. Fearless person, fearless conversation coming up. So not even cats or spiders?
I'm not afraid of spiders. I don't say I really like the way they look, but I'm not really afraid of them.
Okay.
I take them and put them outside if I can.
I need you as my roommate. Well, let's jump right into it. Thank you so much for doing this on short notice. I appreciate your contribution as you continuously provide important input into the political landscape in Bermuda. As a former PLP minister, those who may not know, you've chosen to oppose the party as part of the independent movement. Speak to us as to why.
It's interesting. I didn't really think it as being opposing the party. I think of it as moving forward and taking Bermuda to another place. I don't really think of it as opposing the PLP. I think of it as something that I've done, I've outlived. And in many ways, I think Bermuda has outlived the PLP for the moment. Not to say that they would never be elected again. But as seen in this moment, it was decided that I was going to support the independent movement because I think that party politics in Bermuda has been very toxic. It's gotten very toxic. It wasn't always that way, obviously. And I have supported the PLP in the past. However, it's just too toxic for me. And I decided that I would look at another way to help Bermuda move forward. For me, it's always been about my country first, not the party.
Indeed, and you've been consistent with that message. But when speaking of the toxicity you see today in the PLP, again, you were not just a member or part of caucus or a delegate. You were an elected MP. You were a sitting cabinet. When you see the PLP of today versus the PLP you were a part of, what are the differences you see that stand out?
Well, one of the things that stand out, obviously, is the fact that we were a much gentler party. When I say gentler, if you can look at the PLP and think of it as gentler, that was us. The original group that got elected, the original cabinet, we were not calling people's names and fighting and you're the enemy if you don't support us. And people weren't like it was, their favorite boxing team and you have to support them or else. And that's what it's like now. You always feel like either you're for us or against us. And that should not be the case for Bermudians, period, in any circumstances. We're a small country. Most of us are related if you check out your DNA. And we really should be looking at the opportunity to support each other. And I got to a point where the PLP just does not support people who are not PLP. This one, it's the way how the political parties are treated. the way how, the OBA gets attacked on a personal level rather than looking at the policies that each of them make. Anyway, for me personally, I got tired of the going backwards and forwards of the political parties, the nastiness that exists that's so unnecessary in a place like Bermuda. And so I decided that I would support independent candidates. And that's what I've been doing for the last couple of months, getting
Okay.
them up. We have almost 20 people who are running. Actually, they haven't been announced yet. So far, we've only announced 2. But the
Okay.
point is we're at a situation where people will get announced. And what we're doing is training them to be effective parliamentarians.
Mhm.
It's not a party. People say it's a party, and we just ignore that because we're
Well,
not getting on that level to defend ourselves. We're
yeah.
just going to get up to snuff. And when you look, they're just going to, here comes the independence.
I want to get back to that later because the whole thing about the political party independence and so on. But let's go back to Friday. Friday there was a by-election in constituency 36. It's fascinating to me that the PLP is celebrating this as a win, knowing that it's a PLP stronghold. Been a PLP stronghold. I think people felt a bit of hope because of what happened in 2012. Ray Charlton and Michael Scott split by 8 or 12 votes. But what are your thoughts on the result from Friday in the by-election for constituency 36?
Well, obviously, the win was for the PLP, and Reverend Emily Gail Dill. She did the best, and she turned out being the best of the group. But here's the thing: when I say I'm on the voters, that is, but to win 162 votes out of 1,199 potential votes is amazing to me. But the rest of the group, between us, we took the other 200 and something, almost 300 votes, and lost. But the point is, she got 162 votes, which was the highest, and she won. Now, is that a slight for the PLP? Obviously, but more so, it's a slight on the people who didn't come out to vote. I tell people, the PLP won because we had a low turnout, and the idea, if you're going to have different groups, if you're going to have more than 2 running, then obviously you have to make sure you get as many people out. You should get as many people out in any case, but having a low turnout was really the issue. And that's why the PLP won. So is it a win? Yes, it was a win for them. But is it something to be glorified over? Definitely not. We should have had more people come out to vote. And if people don't come out to vote, well, you get what you want. Stop complaining about the PLP.
Indeed. Well said. Audience, if you have any questions or comments for Dr. Webb, please send them through. We'll get through as many questions and comments as possible. Sticking with what happened on Friday night, you mentioned the independent candidates. Obviously, Lieutenant Cyree Dean was an independent in the by-election up there. Were you surprised that he ended up with more votes than the OBA candidate, Carl Neblett?
No, we expected that. That we expected. We even talked about it with Mark and ourselves, and we knew that it was going to be, we thought it was going to be against Cyree and Emily Gale, but as it turned out, Mark got he got 13 votes more than Cyree. I mean, a young guy like Cyree coming out and canvassing over a period of 3 weeks and doing as well as he did, we're very proud of him. He did very good. As far as we're concerned. Of course, it would have been great if 32 people voted differently. That meant he would have won, of course, but that wasn't the case.
Mm-hmm. Again, sticking with the result of 36, we spoke about this yesterday, and you just mentioned that the victor, the Reverend Dr. Emily Gail Dill, got 162 votes. The others combined had more votes than her. You may disagree with what I said yesterday and what I'm about to repeat, but the PLP is a coalition government. It was a coalition government when you were involved. We may not want to.
How do you define coalition government?
Coalition government, people with different ideologies. They don't share the same ideology. They may just share the same, and the term you didn't want to use earlier, the same shared enemy For instance, it seems like the shared enemy was white supremacy and racism at that time. Today, the shared enemy is anyone who disagrees with us. So, the Honorable former Minister and the late Walton Brown and yourself were probably on the more liberal side versus the Terry Lister, who was more on the conservative side. So it's always
Yes.
existed in terms of that. So now people are saying, since Friday, we need the way forward to, win against the PLP is for a coalition government. And I think the first thing we have to understand is that the PLP itself today is a coalition government. Let's use some examples. Curtis Dickinson is very different from a Jason Hayward, right? Jason Hayward is probably very different from a Renee Ming, and it goes on. So how do we create this coalition government with independents, FDM, and OBA? Because there are people who have said, that was a message on Friday to the OBA, and it just as it was a message to the PLP. But how do we move forward with a coalition government if everyone has their own way of thinking that we should govern the country?
Well, that's not how I define a coalition government, number one. In a political party, you always have people that are different, but that doesn't mean that the party itself is a coalition government. They joined the party and the party won. The Progressive Labor Party won. A coalition government for me would be, for example, let's say the independent candidates win 10 seats. Which means neither of the other two have a majority, obviously, unless, of course, the PLP won the whole 20 difference in the seats. But let's say we won 10, somebody else wins 10, somebody else wins 18, to the point where none of them have a majority. None of the three who ran in the election, let's say, wins the majority. So, of course, it would have to be a coalition government. A coalition government in that case would be the independents would say, okay, we won 12 seats, the OBA won 8, and the PLP won 3. We're going to take, and we would be the power brokers, let's say, in this case, just an example, that decide who is going to be where. Well, we would look over and say, okay, we're going to form a coalition government, but we're going to take the best of who we want to have join us, let's say. So you would say, as you mentioned, you might say a Curtis Dickinson, you might say on the OBA side a Susan Jackson, or etc. Those are coalition governments. A coalition government is something that is formed ordinarily from various entities from different parties. That's normally the definition of a coalition government. The PLP is not a coalition government. The PLP is a Progressive Labor Party. And the Progressive Labor Party currently holds the government. The fact that the people in the Progressive Labor Party are different, I mean, that's normal. We're all different. We all have different opinions. I don't think you're going to find a party where everybody agrees, even when it comes to the party platform. I think there are issues in the party platform, for example, that people don't agree to, and some might vote for the party nonetheless, and some might not. So I don't think that you would ever find a political party that's made up of people that all think alike. They just happen to have an ideology that might be similar. For example, the PLP is a Labor Party. Allegedly, they support Labor Party more than they support business. Of course, for me, that's questionable. But because they're very much supporting of the businesses in Bermuda, some would argue to the extent that Bermudians themselves, labor gets less. So the fact that people are different in the PLP doesn't mean that it's a Labor Party at all. A coalition government at all. It's a Labor Party. That's what it considers itself to be, and that's what it holds itself out as, not as a coalition government. I don't agree with that definition.
I challenge that in this respect. People were sharing a picture on Friday, and I don't know if this was intentional, but the picture had Reverend Emily Gale Dill along with three former UBP MPs, 2 of them being former UBP leaders. That represents a coalition to me, because these are individuals from a United Bermuda Party that are in the PLP. I think we'll have to agree to disagree on that. I get your point about having different thoughts and thinking differently on how to approach things. But I guess the question was on the coalition part: is there room for the independent movement to collaborate and work with the FDM and OBA in creating a coalition group to oppose the PLP in the upcoming election? Or because I believed on Friday, I said this prior to it, that the way to victory for Reverend Dr. Emily Gail Dill was for the others to cancel themselves out. So said, so done.
So you're asking me about the picture?
Yeah, the question I'm asking is there a way forward for the independents, the OBA, and FDM to work together as a coalition group to go up against the PLP in the next election?
Well, the independent group hasn't discussed it at all.
Okay.
We know that Mark mentioned it when we were there, and Emily Gale mentioned it afterwards. It was news to me that it had even been discussed. However, at this point, the independents are focusing on getting elected individually. At the end of the day, excuse me, can you get my batteries going low? You can plug it in.
Love it. Live TV, folks. Live TV.
Live TV. It was totally charged when I started.
Uh-huh.
You're eating up a lot of energy there, Jamal.
My apologies. But yes,
okay, so
you were
the
saying
question,
Emily Gale. Yeah, Emily Gale mentioned it as well. You said.
yeah, she mentioned it as well. But so far, in terms of what the independents are doing, is simply getting ready to win their seat wherever they're going to run, win their constituency. So we haven't discussed it whether or not we would form a coalition going into the election. However, winning the election, and depending on how that pans out, then obviously a coalition government would be a possibility. Or people might decide to stay independent on their own. It's all an individual decision. I don't think we'll make a decision as a group. It hasn't been discussed. Everybody's running independent, and so far that's how we're keeping it. People running independent to gain seats to actually change the face of government in Bermuda. But if people want a party that has, the same ideology, then it's not the independents. Independents will represent Bermuda on all levels and different ways, not answering to a political party, not saying, okay, the party supports this, so you better vote this way, and you got a party whip that tells you you have to vote that way, etc. That's not what we're looking to do. And if it means joining a political party, then it's pointless for us. We're not going to do it. If they want to join us and be independent in their thought, that's fine. But for us to go and join the PLP's philosophy or the OBA's philosophy, personally, me, as an independent thinker and potentially an independent candidate, I definitely wouldn't join a political party. I have no interest. Been there, done that. And I know how that will pan out.
Interesting. You just beat my other question. I was going to say, are you throwing your head in? But you said, I'll leave that now. Let's go to the audience. Got a couple of questions from the audience, Dr. Webb. Renee Simmons, she's asking, I assume independents will never head up a ministry. How will this work if several independents are voted in?
Well, if we form the coalition that I just spoke about, the definition of coalition, as I explained, then of course we'd be, why wouldn't we be ministers? I mean, if we're made up of a group of people that made the minister, let's say the independents get, as I said earlier, 10 seats, and the other parties neither get a majority, we're all going to be somebody's going to be part of the independents. And what we would do, obviously, is take the best people from the other parties if we had to form a coalition government. So, of course, we would be ministers. And in fact, one of us could even be leader of the country, because the Constitution says that the government leader is the one who garnishes the most votes from the members of parliament. It doesn't have to be a party, particularly the way it is in Bermuda. Of course, parties win, so parties have their leaders, but it doesn't even negate the fact that there could be an independent to be leaders. I mean, if we look at other countries, Cayman Islands, for example, we talk about Cayman as our closest neighbor and competition in the financial sense, tourism sense, etc. But Cayman Islands has 19 members of parliament, 12 of which are independent. Yeah. And some of those, of course, are ministers, and the leader is independent. So that's not unusual. If you look at the Isle of Man, same thing. I mean, you look at Britain, of course, Britain only has 13 independents, but nonetheless, British Parliament has independents members. So it's nothing unusual about it. But, us in Bermuda, very often we're the last one to make any significant changes. But it's better late than never. So they're no different. Independent candidates are no different from other MPs. We can hold office, you can be minister. I mean, who's to say, let's say, if the OBA won, for example, and they would say, okay, I want to have this person, and they would ask that person if you would be a member, our minister of finance. And if you say, as long as I'm an independent member, there's no reason why you couldn't do that. I mean, you're all equal in parliament, and you have members of parliament that will be in political parties and members of parliament who will be independent. The only difference is that the independents don't have to follow what the party tells them to do. The independents can be an independent thinker. The independent candidates and the independent MPs are not a party, so to speak. Everybody talks to each other and everybody does the best in the country. So, for example, the PLP, somebody could bring legislation that you might agree with, and somebody might say, okay, I don't agree with that, so they vote against it. I mean, you're much more liberal, you're much more free than being an independent member of parliament. So there are 44,000 members of parliament worldwide, many of whom are independent. And I'm going to get that number and statistic because I'm curious exactly what percentage.
And our audience, again, if you have any more questions or comments, I'll get to the ones that have been sent. While we're on independent candidates, we've had Sir John Swan, who contested constituency 10, and we've had Lieutenant Cyrene Dean, who contested constituency 36. What are you looking for in independent candidates? Is there room for more people if they were interested? But what are the qualities? We had a question this morning for the audience, and what qualities are they looking for people they vote in? What qualities are you looking for in terms of candidates that you're working with?
Well, first of all, ideally, it's people who are active in the community, people in some instances who are known, who work with people well, who have projects that they've been doing, who show already that they are workers before they even get elected. So if you look at Cyrene Beam, for example, he has a program called Pay a Kid, which helps kids to, work in the community, he helps them to get internships. I mean, and he started this at the age of 17. So I think we all know somebody who does that, and he's helped over 350 kids. We know that he's a worker and he's capable of getting ahead. At the age of 26, he's done quite a lot. He's been the governor's ADC. And as you said earlier, he's actually served in the Bermuda Regiment. So we have people, listen, here's the thing. This is how it works, okay? We get together and we're training a group of people who would like to be independent members. If somebody comes tomorrow and says, I want to be an independent member, we can't tell them no. Right. It's their decision. You can run as an independent. You don't have to be a part of any group. The only significant part that the independent group, quite frankly, is playing is to train people. Encourage them, read the Constitution, get to know what it means to be a member of parliament, go and watch a member of parliament, have something that you're passionate about, that you would like to bring about change in the community. Be an expert or develop yourself, I should say, even if you're not an expert in a certain area that you feel strongly about. We're trying to get Bermudians to help other Bermudians by leading their country that is more suitable and in sync with how Bermudians think. And in some instances, because independent candidates are much more forward thinking in how they think, because they don't necessarily have to follow a political party, I should say. It makes a big difference. I mean, you could stop somebody who's a member of parliament and say, I want to get this done, etc. They say, well, my party doesn't agree with that. And so it doesn't happen. And that's just how it is. I mean, you make a rule and then you change the law the next day. I'm exaggerating. I was thinking particularly of the same-sex law. I mean, look at that. I mean, and a lot of people didn't necessarily agree with the decision one way or the other. But if you have an independent candidate, they can think on that and any other issue based on their own free will, rather than having to follow a political party. And by the way, as I said earlier, a independent member of parliament is equal to another member of parliament. You could bring a motion to parliament, you could be a bill to parliament, you could vote how you want on legislation, which of course the political party wouldn't necessarily do that. So the difference is we're trying to allow people who want to be an independent candidate, we're helping them to get to that place. And As I said, we're training right now a number of people, and hopefully all of them will run. So far, all of them want to run, which is why they're there. And they're the only ones who could decide if they're going to run or not. We can't tell them to run or not. What would that be? That would be controlling. We'd be a controlling group. The
Right.
idea is to train you, Jamal, if you want to be an independent candidate, give you information on what it means.
Mhm.
We have former members of parliament who are helping others, obviously, including myself, and get them to where they be. And hopefully, when the next election call, they run and we get some in. I mean, Sir John did very well. He only lost
Yeah.
if 6 people had voted differently, he would have been in. And with respect to Cyree, if 32 people, as I mentioned earlier, had voted differently, he would have won. So clearly, we are having an impact.
Yeah.
And that's what we intend to do in the next general election.
Indeed. We've got a comment from Michael Daniels. He says, will the independent movement engage demographics who are not involved?
What does it mean? He mean democrats that are not involved?
I don't know if he can explain, but we do have another one, Mark Arthur C. Phillips. Ms. Webb, how important is diversity of thought for any political party?
Oh my God, I think it is key. Mark Arthur, thank you for asking that question. Diversity of thought is key. Unfortunately, in the political parties, we don't have diversity of thought, at least not what's demonstrated. Maybe behind the scenes, that's the case. But what comes forth in Parliament is there doesn't seem to be diversity of thought, of course, because everybody goes along with whatever the party issue is. So in terms of diversity of thought, I think it's very important. I think diversity of thought is very important to Bermuda as a country, because we tend very often to follow the leader.
Interesting.
Instead of, bringing our own issues to the table and our own thoughts.
Yeah, I have been on this show using that term quite a lot. And one of the reasons for is I think after 2020 and the George Floyd, we kind of, DEI and diversity, we kind of got stuck on, race, gender, sexuality, and the like. And, I've seen spaces where, okay, right at that time, you look on LinkedIn and there was a new Black person being appointed as the VP of DEI or something, these people are not good enough to be CEOs. They're only good enough to be and then you've now seen a lot of those positions eliminated. And I kept telling people, not every Black face is going to think the same or want to represent. It's like an HR department. HR is there for the company, right? No matter what they make you believe, they're there for the company. They're not going to represent that HR person is an employee too. So they're going to cover themselves, right? So I appreciate when people try to say, oh, well, we have Black people, we have gay people, we have Asians, we have that. I want to know how they think. I want to know if they're really going to push for progress. So diversity of thought, I think, is what you're kind of explaining with the independent movement as well.
Exactly.
Mark Jr. said earlier, the amount of politicians that said they would do one thing and then when they went to the House, voted along party lines. That is dangerous in 2024 to me. It's dangerous to me in 2024.
Me as well.
Bermuda, to many people, seems like it's in a very bad state. Based on Friday, people are choosing apathy, right? They've chosen not to vote. How dangerous, and look, speak to myself as well, right? This is my first US election. I have a chance to vote for president of the United States, right? How bad is it for people to choose not to vote versus maybe an independent or one of the solutions? I mean, the current government may turn people way off Dr. Webb, but people just don't seem to feel like anything would change regardless of who's in power. What would you say to them? What advice would you give to them?
First of all, Jamal, feel free to call me Renee. I prefer to be called Renee. I tell people my titles don't make me who I am. It just says that I'm capable of learning certain things, etc. But I do prefer my first name. Whenever anybody says Dr. Webb, I cringe. When they call, and it's interesting, when they call me the Honorable, I don't have that sort of angst because, it was based on what I've done in my work in the Commonwealth. The Queen awards you based on the work you've done, the title of Honorable, in the case of us who are former politicians. So that I don't mind because that was work merited. But study is merited too, but it's not the same. Gotcha. For me personally, my experience is more. So that's why when you say that, I'm like, why is it being so formal?
Gotcha.
So formal. Anyway, that was an aside. So your question was?
Yes. Wow, I almost forgot. I think right
You're
now,
talking about how bad it is when somebody doesn't
as
vote,
you saw on
basically.
Friday, people are not turning up to polls. Like they're just not interested in voting based on the current state, not realizing that there are other options to vote for or consider. What advice would you give to people who have just no interest in the process right now and don't understand that if they choose that, then we're gonna end up in the same space. Like we're not gonna move the needle.
I understand that a lot of people are angry at the way things have turned out in Bermuda. They're
Mhm.
just angry and they don't want to vote. I get it. But
Mhm.
it's not helping your situation if you don't actually go out and exercise your right to vote. And if you're going to have a vote against the party, then you're having a protest vote, or your party in particular. Just vote is my thing. If
Mhm.
you're not voting, then you can't really say you're a part of the process. You can't really complain because you didn't exercise your right. And you might think your vote is not worth anything, but it is. If everybody votes, or if more people voted, we could have changed even Friday. I mean, Syrie or Mark Bean would have won, and that means obviously that the PLP wouldn't have won. So you can change things around, but if you don't come out to vote, we're going to keep getting the same thing that we're getting now. People are complaining, and 162 people came out and they said, "Okay, I'm going to vote for my party," and 200 and something else came out and said, "I'm not going to vote for that party. I'm going to vote for somebody else." But 900 and plus people, yes, just under 900, 800 and something people stayed home. They didn't vote. They didn't bother. They didn't care enough to exercise their vote and make a difference. So
Mhm.
the fact that you don't care enough and you're not going to vote, that's nothing to be proud of.
Mhm.
In my view, I think exercising your vote is important,
Mhm.
particularly in a small place like Bermuda. In a larger country, like the U.S., for example, your 10 votes between you and your family might not make a difference. In Bermuda, it definitely makes a difference. That's my
And we've
point.
seen that play out. We've seen that play out. Before you head out, uh, if someone was interested in getting involved, maybe even donating to the independent movement, not just a candidate, but supporting in some way, is there anyone they can reach out to, somewhere they can go for more information?
That's horrible. I don't even remember the number. That's I just said he's going to ask me, and I thought, what is the number? Okay, so you can call. I'm going to give him an idea of who to call. Okay,
Okay.
you can call Susie Aruda is her name, and you can call her at. I think I know Susie's number by heart. Do they? Probably not. Probably not. But anyway, I'll get you that information, and can you post it for me?
Yeah, we
That's
can.
the best thing to do because I really don't remember the number. I just go in and do what I got to do and leave. And of course, all the independents have different numbers, needless
Right.
to say. And we just have a group, as I said, that are teaching each other. And if you ask me anybody's number by heart, I probably couldn't give it to you. This is the awful thing about Southwards, right? We don't even remember numbers anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, my daughter is probably the closest person to me on the planet. You ask me to tell you her number, I wouldn't even, because I just on my phone call
Same.
Tiara.
Same.
So it's, yeah.
No, same. I'm in that same boat. Dr. Webb, thank you for, I'm sorry, Renee, thank you so much for making time for us. Definitely want to have you back on and would love to speak to some more independent candidates. Syrie has been a great person on this show twice. First to talk about his business earlier this year, and then
Excellent.
lastly, before the by-election. Hopefully, the quality of candidate is what Bermudians want to see.
And you're going
And
to be impressed, I have to say.
so
We
far,
have a
great.
great group of people, and it's interesting. We have a couple aside from Syrie. We have one other in his 20s, two others actually in their 20s, and
Okay.
then we have people. The majority age would be between 35 and 45.
Okay.
Nice, healthy age.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Okay, and guys,
interesting people, interested in their country, qualified in different areas, bright. Just what Bermuda needs: some bright sunshine to come into the political arena.
indeed. Well, it's
Before
what.
you go, I want to ask you a quick question. What was that you said about Black people being evil? What was that you said
Oh,
somebody
yes,
told you?
yes, yes.
I was taken aback.
Yeah, someone said to me, the easiest vote, and it was a Bermudian, a black Bermudian, said the easiest vote to get is the black vote because all you have to do is convince them that the other is. All you have to do is convince them that you're less evil than the other, and they'll vote for you. And
Wow.
it was food for thought, and I was like, hmm. Yeah, kind of with the race thing in Bermuda. Yeah, you convince them that UBPOBA is the big bad wolf in the US, the Democrats pit, you know, yep, yep. I see your point. May not agree with it, but I definitely get the point.
I just don't see people as evil. I mean, I was strong. I'm like, evil? Bermudians are evil
No, not
because they have a
Bermuda.
different opinion?
No, not Bermuda. The voters evil. The point. No, let me rephrase it. So
The
everyone,
politician's evil then. Somebody's evil.
yes, so you know how people say the lesser of two evils. So all you have
Uh,
to do is convince Black people that you're less evil than the other political party. That's what the point.
got you.
But
Got you. Strong word, though. I can't agree with it. I don't see people
thought.
as evil.
Gave me food for thought. I'm like, because the term lesser of two evils is so often used, right? And I don't know, it gave me food for thought because I'm like, never looked at it, you know. But thank you so much, and we'll be happy to speak to some of the independent candidates like Cyree, Sir John, and like going forward. Bermuda needs a shift. You know it. I think the majority of the people know it, but it's not going to happen if we all stay at home, right?
Exactly, and this is what this group getting together. We want to help change Bermuda by electing independent candidates to make a significant difference, not just one or two, a significant difference in the political future of Bermuda. It's needed because what we have now is not working. I think we all agree with that. And so we're here to help make that difference and make that political shift
All right.
in the country.
And what is your role with the independent movement, by the way?
I'm training. I'm one of the trainers who's training them, helping them get up to snuff, educating them, giving them a lot of research information, and that's continuing. And I'm not the only one, obviously, but I'm definitely one of the significant ones because I've had the privilege of being a member of Parliament in Bermuda and being a government minister, et cetera, and also, of course, representing Bermuda overseas. So I wear a number of hats, and it's to help people get motivated, inspired, and moving on to educate themselves. So when they do become a member of Parliament, they can work to the best of their ability, without being hindered by a political party telling them what to do.
Indeed. Thank you for your contribution, then and now. Hopefully we'll have you on again soon. A lot to talk about.
With pleasure.
Have a wonderful day. Talk soon.
Thank you, you too. All the best.
Thank you. The Honorable Renee Webb, thank you so much. Folks, if you appreciated that conversation, please give us a thumbs up, a love, a like. We'll take a quick break, come back, but make sure you share that conversation with your friends, your family, your colleagues. And hey, it ain't going to change if you don't get out there and be a part of it. All right. We have a role to play. We'll be back in 1 minute, 25 seconds. Stick with us.